and thou shalt be saved.
Hey, what's crackalacking, people? This discussion is a little overdue, as I wanted to get it out a while back, but clearly never. And, regardless of that, I still think it's a relevant topic and one that will inevitably be discussed again in the future, given the nature of today's gaming climate. Re-reviewing games months and even sometimes a year or more after they have launched is nothing new. But there was one game that got essentially released and re-reviewed not long ago by Eurogamer, which set me off. Even though I got set off before, this was the moment I thought, right, I need to talk about this. This game is none other than Street Fighter V. Now, like many gamers, Street Fighter is a series that remains close to my gaming heart. There's absolutely no denying the impact this series has had on not just on the genre, but also on the industry itself and even pop culture. If you were going to list the top 10 most well-known and influential gaming franchises, I feel without a doubt that Street Fighter would sit happily in that top 10. As for me, I still consider it to be the best fighter game series out there, it's my personal opinion, although over the years it's had some stiff competition. I remember the days of going into my local chip shop and playing on Street Fighter 2 with my friends, way back in the 90s. Then, of course, the absolutely mind-blowing day came when the series finally hit home consoles, and it was, up and up from there. Up to this point, I've played and owned every mainline numbered Street Fighter game, as you can see here, but roll up to Street Fighter 5, and this is the first time in 15, 16 years. No, it's longer than that. My God, it was the 30th anniversary, wasn't it? When we're talking about 30th anniversary of Street Fighter that I haven't bought or even wanted to play a mainline game in the series. So what went wrong? As we know, Street Fighter V upon launch was, in my opinion, an absolute travesty, a shambles and a complete embarrassment to what the series previously was. I don't want to go into the launch of that title now because that's history, but it also serves as the foundation for this discussion. After a myriad of adjustments, continued failures, some corrections, Street Fighter V has now essentially redisguised itself and relaunched as Street Fighter V Arcade Edition. But even now, it still lacks a number of things that were present in previous Street Fighter games. So Eurogamer, like many other sites and channels, naturally went ahead and re-reviewed this game, this time calling it, from Eurogamer's perspective, an essential purchase, too long and painful years after its initial launch. Now, as we know, there are many games in this industry that are considered to be serviced titles. Those games that launched with a base title and over time built upon those foundations in order to deliver a continuous and expanding game for players to persist in, long after its initial launch. These types of games were initially reserved mostly for what we call MMOs, massively multiplayer online games. But even before MMOs, we had expansion packs and etc. Once again, delivering additional content on top of the already established and complete base game. This, for the most part, is fine, of course. Especially for MMOs, which are designed to be a persistent, ever-evolving games and subscription-based services as well. So you're paying each month to continue playing that game. But jumping back to Street Fighter, this is a series I refuse to class as a serviced game and even want as a service game. If anyone's been following me for some time now, you might know that I have grown a great distaste for many modern practices in this industry at the moment. I see no place for things like loot boxes, microtransactions, mandatory day one patches or day one DLC that offers something that should have been in the base game from the start, at least in regards to the premium AAA market for the most part. I have lots of reasons why I greatly dislike those things, which I won't further elaborate on in this video, but this falls back to Street Fighter V and Street Fighter as a series for the discussion point of this video. It's hard having grown up on games that have offered you so much in the past for the premium price you paid, only to have them now stripped out over time down to shallow husks, still remaining the same price and having those one standard features offered to you at further cost later down the line because of reasons. When people look back now at Street Fighter V, which review should they take into consideration? The original review, which tells people that the game plays well, but is virtually void of content previously in Street Fighter games, or the new review, which says this is the version of Street Fighter you should be playing, or the version that you should have or the version I should have initially released. If I had bought Street Fighter V at launch, I would have been pissed. I mean, I was raging anyway, because me being a Street Fighter fan, I followed the trailers, the launch, and honestly felt betrayed. But then hey, this is modern Capcom, right? I should have expected it perhaps, but then again, should I have? Pretty much the same thing happened to No Man's Sky, right? The game launched a shell of what it was meant to have been. Then over months and months, it was eventually patched to hell into something worthy of being called a complete title. The game was, of course, re-reviewed, and after the initial snubbing of the title, it was finally recommended. Should consumers be expected to hang around whilst these mistakes and rush-to-market titles fix themselves up in months and sometimes years that follow? So I guess this is the point in this video. I'm asking you all in some ways, should games like this be given a second chance, or not so much a second chance? No, that's not so much a second chance, but should these games get review scores again? For AAA developers like Capcom, they clearly know better. Have done better in the past. So I see very little reasons as to why they should be given a second chance at redemption on such things, especially when they mess with the biggest fighting game franchise in gaming. I'm not saying that Street Fighter V should not be played now. That's up to the individual, of course. But what I'm trying to say is, I personally don't feel that they should have had their past review scores essentially overwritten or even forgotten about by the wider world, because we also have to remember that many people bought that game at launch for full price and were essentially given a half-finished title. Once again, it's not just Street Fighter, but should these people be expected to hang around, especially when it comes when there are other fighting games out there that offer just as good gameplay or vastly more content, with the likes of Smash Bros and Injustice as prime examples today, as stellar fighting games that have great lineup of characters, great content in that premium package straight from the start. I guess you can argue that the sales of Street Fighter V reflect the feelings of the wider gaming community, as its numbers, with it also being exclusive to the PlayStation 4, with an installed base of 70 million consoles, was nothing short of tragic. As for indie developers, with the likes of No Man's Sky, this is a tougher situation, as young indie devs can be taken for rides. One that Sony took No Man's Sky on. But at the same time, those indie developers aren't completely innocent themselves, as we discover with some of them. So for me, I guess it's one of those moments where you simply have to vote with your wallet. Let these developers know that if they purposefully release half-baked games that were not going to stand for it, and refuse to support the title in the near future due to what could be considered as a slap to the consumer's face at the start. I certainly hold grudges with some developers. Look no further than me with EA, and even now with Street Fighter V, where after what it was, it deserved the review scores that it got. Absolutely deserved them. It deserved the backlash that it got, and that should, in my mind, always remain there now with this title in clear plain sight. As harsh as that might sound, but anyway, I think I've said enough here. Hopefully I've conveyed my thoughts well enough. But of course, your feedback can add a lot to this, and I naturally look forward to it. So to sum it up, Should rushed half-baked games, especially from the AAA market and established IPs, be given a second chance at a fresh review score later down the line, after the initial upset at launch? Let me know your thoughts below, people. And as for me,
it's mercy, compassion, and forgiveness I lack, not rationality.